new horror story. The last recording from Hillcrest Cemetery. I'm recording this because I'll be dead by morning, and someone needs to know what really happened in Hillcrest Cemetery 23 years ago. My hands are shaking so badly I can barely hold this phone, but I need to get this out before it's too late. It started when we were 12. Me, Danny, Marcus, and Sarah. 4 kids who thought we were braver than we actually were. The cemetery sat at the edge of our neighborhood like a rotting tooth, all cracked headstones and overgrown weeds. Most kids avoided it, but we were different. We were explorers. The night it happened, the air tasted metallic, like copper pennies dissolved on your tongue. October fog rolled between the graves so thick you could barely see your own feet. The old caretaker had warned us about the restricted section, the part where they buried the ones who died. Wrong. Suicides, murderers, the insane. Ground too cursed for proper Christian burial, but 12-year-olds don't listen to warnings. The chain link fence around that section had rusted through in spots, creating jagged holes just big enough for skinny kids to squeeze through. Marcus went first, his sneakers squelching in the muddy earth on the other side. The sound was wet, organic, like stepping on something that had once been alive. "Guys, check this out," Sarah whispered, her flashlight beam dancing across a headstone so old the name had been worn away by decades of rain. But below it, carved deep into the granite, were symbols we'd never seen before. They hurt to look at, geometric patterns that seemed to shift and writhe in the flickering light. Danny pressed his palm against the stone. "It's warm," he said, and I watched his breath fog in the cold air. "Guys, this thing is actually warm." That's when we heard the scratching. It came from below, soft at first, like fingernails dragging across wood. Then louder. More frantic. The sound of something desperate to get out. We should have run. God, we should have run. Instead, we started digging. The soil came away easily, too easily, as if it wanted to be moved. 3 feet down, Danny's flashlight illuminated something pale and smooth. Bone. But not human bone. These were too long, too curved, with joints that bent in impossible directions. Sarah reached down and touched it. The scratching stopped. For a moment, the cemetery went completely silent. No insects, no wind. Even our own breathing seemed muffled. Then the temperature dropped so fast I could see ice crystals forming on the headstone. The bone cracked under Sarah's touch, splitting down the middle with a sound like breaking glass. Something black and viscous leaked out, pooling in the dirt. It moved against gravity, flowing upward, defying every law of physics I thought I understood. That's when the whispers started. They came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking words in a language that predated human civilization. The sound bypassed our ears entirely, speaking directly to something primal in our brains. Ancient, hungry, patient. We ran then, finally, our survival instincts overriding our curiosity. But as we squeezed back through the fence, I felt something follow us. Not physically, something deeper. Like a hook had been set in our souls, and something on the other end was slowly reeling us in. Over the years, my friends started dying. Danny first, 3 years later. Car accident, they said, but I saw the security footage. He drove straight into that tree on purpose, his face blank, his eyes reflecting something that wasn't headlights. Marcus went next, junior year of high school. They found him in his bathtub, wrists opened, but the cuts were too precise, too deliberate. And the marks on his arms, those same geometric patterns from the headstone, carved into his flesh with surgical precision. Sarah lasted until college, jumped from her dorm room window, 14 stories up. But her roommate swore she saw Sarah talking to someone in the room right before. Someone who cast no reflection in the mirror. For 20 years, I've been waiting my turn. Moving cities, changing names, but you can't run from something that lives in your blood. The whispers never stopped. They got louder, more insistent, especially at night. Telling me things about people I'd never met, about their fears, their secrets, their children. Today, I finally understood why I've been spared so long. I wasn't meant to be a victim. I was meant to be a vessel. The thing we released that night, it needed time to grow, to learn, to adapt. It fed on my friends first, harvesting their life force, their memories, their essence. But it saved me for last because I was different, stronger, more useful. I can feel it moving inside me now, reshaping me from the inside out. My reflection has started to change. My eyes are deeper, darker, filled with knowledge no human should possess. My dreams are full of places I've never been, faces of people who haven't been born yet. It's almost ready. The transformation is nearly complete, and when it's finished, I'll go hunting. There are others like us out there, curious children who've stumbled upon things they shouldn't have. The thing inside me knows where to find them. It's been watching, waiting, preparing. This recording will reach the right person. Someone young, someone brave, someone stupid enough to come looking for the truth. They'll follow the clues just like we did. They'll find the cemetery, find that special section, find that broken headstone. And when they do, I'll be waiting. Can you hear me listening? Awesome, thanks for listening. If you really like the story, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more daily stories. New horror story. Babysitting rules: never open the basement door. The crayon drawing shows 4 stick figures. Mommy, Daddy, Emma, Jake, and a 5th figure with no face, colored completely black. "Who's this one, buddy?" I ask Emma, pointing to the dark figures I tuck her into bed. "That's Mr. Quiet," she whispers, glancing toward her bedroom floor. "He lives downstairs and only comes out when Mommy and Daddy do their work." Jake pipes up from his twin bed. "Mr. Quiet likes it when we're really, really good and don't make noise." I've been babysitting the Morrison kids for 3 months, and this is the first I'm hearing about an imaginary friend. Usually, kids can't stop talking about their invisible companions. But Emma and Jake only mention Mr. Quiet in hushed tones, like they're sharing a secret. "Does Mr. Quiet play games with you?" "No." Emma shakes her head vigorously. "We're not supposed to go downstairs when he's visiting. Daddy says Mr. Quiet gets scared if there's too much noise." Something cold settles in my stomach. The Morrison house has always felt off. Too quiet, too clean, with that persistent smell of bleach that seems strongest near the basement door. Mrs. Morrison's instructions are always the same. Keep the children upstairs after 7 p.m. Make sure they're asleep by 8:30, and under no circumstances should you go to the basement level. I figured it was a home office setup, maybe confidential work stuff. Mr. Morrison travels frequently for business, and Mrs. Morrison works from home doing consulting. They pay well, and the kids are angels, so I never questioned it. But now I'm listening. Beneath the children's steady breathing, there's something else. A soft humming drifting up through the floorboards. Not a tune I recognize, more like a lullaby someone might sing to soothe a frightened child. I check my phone, 9:15 p.m. The Morrisons won't be back until midnight. The humming stops. I wait, counting my heartbeats before walking to the top of the stairs. The basement door is slightly ajar and warm light spills from the crack. But the humming isn't coming from down there, it's coming from behind me. I turn. Emma stands in her doorway, her small hand covering Jake's mouth. Both children are staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. "Mr. Quiet doesn't like it when people listen," Emma whispers. That's when I notice what I missed before. The children's bedroom doors have locks on the outside. My phone buzzes. A text from Mrs. Morrison. "Hope everything's going well. Remember, kids stay upstairs no matter what you hear. Mr. Q can be quite vocal tonight. See you at midnight." Mr. Q. The humming starts again. Definitely coming from the basement now, but it's different. Desperate. Like someone trying to self-soothe through pain. I think about the Morrison family photos lining the hallway. Always taken at exactly chest height, never showing the basement level. About how the children flinch when adults raise their voices. About the way Emma carefully colors inside the lines, like staying within boundaries is a matter of survival. About the missing person posters I've seen around town for the past 6 months. A young woman named Quinn who disappeared from her apartment. Same blonde hair as the person humming downstairs. My hands shake as I scroll through my phone, finding the missing person alert. Quinn Hartley, 23, last seen October 15th. The photo shows her smiling, wearing a yellow sweater that matches the description in Mrs. Morrison's last text. If you hear Quinn tonight, just ignore her. She gets confused sometimes. Not Mr. Q, but Quinn. The basement door creaks open wider. "Hello," a weak voice calls from below. "Please, the children said someone new was here. Can you help me?" I look at Emma and Jake, who are now crying silently, their small hands pressed against their mouths. They've been conditioned to be quiet while their parents keep someone prisoner in their basement. While I've been making sure they stay upstairs, following every instruction, never questioning why. The humming grows louder, more frantic. My phone buzzes again. On our way home early. Don't let Quinn upset you. She tells lies. The kids know to stay quiet. You're doing great. I realize I have maybe 10 minutes before the Morrisons return. 10 minutes to figure out how 3 months of innocent babysitting makes me an accessory to whatever's happening in their basement. But as I reach for the basement door, Emma's small voice stops me cold. You're not supposed to help Mr. Quiet. That's against the rules. Her words aren't confused or frightened. They're matter-of-fact, practiced. The humming stops abruptly, replaced by the sound of a car pulling into the driveway.
New horror story. Don't follow my research. I need to tell you something before you follow me any deeper into these woods. You found my research online, didn't you? The posts about the Romanian ghost brides, the warnings about the Carpathian forest, the academic notes that brought you here. You're probably holding your camera right now, just like I told you to in my messages. Perfect. I've been studying the bride's ghosts for 6 months now. At least, that's what I believed. Until tonight. Until I finally understood why my reflection has been fading each day. Let me start from the beginning. Or maybe there never was a beginning. I remember arriving in this village, renting the room above the bakery. The locals who wouldn't meet my eyes. The old women whispering about brides who died before their wedding day. Cursed to wander the forest, forever searching for grooms. I remember the first night I heard the singing. Voices drifting through the pines, ethereal, beautiful, pulling me forward as the air grew colder. I followed the sound to a moonlit clearing, and I saw her, the bride in tatters, her hair flowing, her eyes, black holes in a gray face. She was looking right at me. Her lips moved, but I couldn't hear the words. I ran. When I checked my footage later, the clearing was empty, just forest. I told myself it was the camera that failed, but the next morning, I couldn't find my reflection in the mirror. I blamed the glass, the lighting, anything but the truth. So I kept documenting, posting online, YouTube, blogs, warnings. Do not enter alone. The ghost brides are real. And people listened. Urban explorers, paranormal hunters, thrill seekers. They came because of me. I always met them, always gave the same warning, always pointed them to the same path. And then I watched them vanish into the trees. They never came back. But I told myself they just left quietly. Tonight was different. I followed a young woman from Cluj, camera in hand, eager. I guided her down the path, into the clearing where the mist always rises. The brides appeared, dozens of them. But they weren't looking at her, they were looking at me. The one in white stepped forward, her voice echoing through the silence. Marcus, you need to remember. And I did. I wasn't the researcher. I was the first victim. 6 months ago, a grad student chasing legends who never came back. The brides weren't hunting for grooms. They were trying to protect the living from me. I looked down at my hands, gray, translucent, barely there. I had been dead all along. Every post, every warning, every so-called research note, it was all bait. The woman from Cluj wasn't staring at the ghost brides in terror. She was staring at me. The lead bride whispered, "He brings them to us, every month, when the hunger grows too strong." And I understood. The brides aren't evil. They're trapped, just like me. And every person I lured here has become part of their eternal wedding party. The young woman stands frozen in the clearing, her camera recording my confession. But she can't run. No one can, once they've come this far. You see, I never told you the most important part of the folklore. The ghost brides don't hunt alone. They have help from those who came before. And now you've heard my story. You've felt my hunger. You understand my purpose. So, tell me, why long do you think it will be before you start posting warnings of your own? New horror story, 847 Days in Hell. School security footage no one should see. I need you to understand something. I've lived this exact day 847 times, and every time I remember everything that came before. My name is David Chen. I'm a security guard at Meadowbrook Elementary. Now I'm about to tell you why I can never ever let this day end. It always starts the same. 6:23 a.m. My alarm clock buzzes with that sharp electronic scream that cuts through my skull. The coffee maker gurgles in the kitchen, and outside my window, Mrs. Patterson's dog barks exactly 7 times before she shushes it. Every single detail, even the way the morning light hits the water stain on my ceiling, it's all the same. The first time it happened, I thought it was just another day. I arrived at the school and found it silent. No buses, no teachers, just silence, heavy as cotton in my ears. The front doors were unlocked. That was wrong. I always locked them the night before. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed at that bone-deep frequency that makes your teeth ache. My footsteps echoed too loud, like the building itself was amplifying me. The usual smell of cleaner and cafeteria food was there, but underneath it was something sweet. Rotten flowers, stagnant water. Room 14B. That's where I found them. 23 children sitting perfectly still at their desks, heads down, hands folded. Their teacher, Miss Rodriguez, stood at the front of the class, her back to me. When I called out, no one moved, not even a twitch. I stepped closer, my hand touched my radio, and that's when I smelled it stronger. The sweet, choking stench. "Miss Rodriguez?" I whispered. She turned around, and where her face should have been, there was nothing, just smooth skin, stretched tight like plastic wrap. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, but somehow, she spoke. Her voice came from everywhere at once, echoing off the walls. "They're all here, David, all accounted for." I ran. God held me, I ran like a coward. My keys clattered against my belt, my breath sharp and metallic in my mouth. Behind me, I heard them, all 23 children scraping their chairs back, raisin in perfect unison. I barely made it to the parking lot, dropped my keys twice. The engine roared on the third try, and I tore out of there like the devil was chasing me. At the police station, I babbled about faceless teachers and silent children. The desk sergeant looked at me like I was insane. They sent a patrol car. And what they found was normal. Morning classes in session, smiling Miss Rodriguez, 23 happy kids. But here's the part that shattered me. They said Miss Rodriguez had been teaching there for 15 years. I'd worked at that school 8 months, and I had never seen her before. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smooth, featureless face turning toward me. And when my alarm rang at 6:23 a.m., the same dog, the same coffee maker, the same water stain. It was the same day. The second time I tried everything. Called in sick, unplugged the alarm, drove to another state. Didn't matter. Somehow, I always ended up in room 14B. By the 100th loop, I realized the truth. I wasn't trapped by a glitch. I wasn't cursed. I was trapped by what I saw when I finally looked closer at those children. They weren't children at all. Every loop I learned more. That thing wearing Miss Rodriguez's shape, it wasn't her. The children, they were copies, replicas. Faces I recognized from missing posters, from milk cartons. And in every loop, I found more evidence. Photos in my apartment of people I didn't know. Employment records saying I'd worked there 15 years, not 8 months. Medical files diagnosing me with episodes and false memories. Loop 847. And now I understand. This isn't happening to me. I'm making it happen. Because the moment this day ends, the truth will come. And the truth is worse than the loop. One question has been gnawing at me. If those weren't children in that classroom, if that wasn't Miss Rodriguez, then who or what have I been working security for all these years? And how many real children walked through those doors and never came home? New horror story. 6.66 receipt changed everything. I need to tell someone what happened to my roommate, Jake, before I lose my mind completely. 3 days ago, he started bringing home takeout from this new place downtown, and now I'm pretty sure I'm living with something that used to be him. Jake was obsessed with finding the perfect late-night food spot, the kind of guy who'd drive 40 minutes for authentic ramen at 2 a.m. So when he came home last Thursday, raving about this hole in the wall called Seventh Circle, I didn't think much of it. He had this greasy paper bag, and the whole apartment reeked of charred meat and something else. Something metallic and sweet, like pennies left in the sun. "Dude, you have to try this," he said, pulling out what looked like a regular burger. But when he bit into it, the smell got stronger. And I swear I heard a faint sizzling sound, like bacon hitting a hot pan. That night, Jake didn't come to bed. I found him in the kitchen at 4 a.m., standing perfectly still in front of the open refrigerator. The light cast these harsh shadows across his face, and when I called his name, he turned toward me with this expression of pure bliss. His eyes were bloodshot, pupils dilated, and there was grease smeared around his mouth. "The food," he whispered. "It's so much better when you're hungry. Really hungry." The next day he went back, came home with another bag, bigger this time. The smell was overwhelming, that same charred meat scent mixed with sulfur and something rotting. I watched him eat through our bedroom doorway, and I swear the food was moving on the plate, twitching. Jake started losing weight fast, not normal weight loss. His skin began hanging loose, like it was deflating from the inside. But he kept eating, kept going back to that place every night. He'd leave around 11 p.m. and return before dawn, always carrying those greasy bags, always with that same blissful expression. By Sunday, I couldn't stand it anymore. I followed him. Seventh Circle was tucked between two abandoned storefronts on Bleecker Street. The windows were painted black, and the only sign was a small red 7 above the door. No business hours posted, no health department rating, nothing. But there was a line of people wrapped around the block, thin, hollow-eyed people who looked like Jake, all waiting in perfect silence. I watched Jake disappear inside. After 20 minutes, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to see what was in there. The door opened before I could knock. A woman in a stained apron smiled at me, with teeth that looked filed to points. Behind her, I could see a dining room filled with people hunched over their plates, eating with desperate intensity. The lighting was wrong, too red, like everything was on fire. "First time?" she asked. Her voice sounded like grease popping in a hot pan. I nodded, and she led me to a table where Jake was sitting. But it wasn't Jake anymore. His face had hollowed out completely, skin stretched tight over jutting bones. He looked up at me and grinned, and I could see straight through the gaps in his cheeks to his molars. "You came," he said, voice barely a whisper. "I saved you a seat." The woman placed a plate in front of me. The smell hit me like a physical force, that metallic sweetness mixed with sulfur and decay. On the plate was something that might have been meat once, but it was moving, pulsing like a heartbeat. "What is this?" I asked. Jake leaned forward, his hollow eyes reflecting the red light. "Hunger," he said. "Pure hunger. The kind that never stops, never satisfies. The kind that makes you feel alive." I ran, pushed past the other diners, all of them thin and hollow like Jake, and burst through the front door. Behind me, I could hear laughter, dozens of people laughing, with voices like breaking glass. When I got home, Jake was already there, sitting in the dark living room. "You didn't eat," he said without turning around. "Jake, what is that place? What are they serving?" He finally looked at me, and in the moonlight streaming through our window, I could see he was crying. But the tears were black, thick, like motor oil. "I can't stop going back," he whispered. "Every bite makes me hungrier. Every meal leaves me emptier, but I can't stop." That was 2 days ago. Jake hasn't come home since then. But here's the thing that's really messing with me. I keep thinking about that plate, about the smell, about the way everyone in that restaurant looked so satisfied while they were eating. And I'm getting hungry, really hungry, the kind of hunger that normal food can't touch. I found the receipt in Jake's jacket pocket. 2 plus, 7th circle. $6.66, paid in cash. But when I called the number printed at the bottom, a voice answered, and it sounded exactly like mine. New horror story. My best friend knocked at the door after his funeral. I'm recording this because I need someone to know what happened, and I don't think the police would believe me. The knocking started 3 hours ago and hasn't stopped. Let me back up. Yesterday, I buried my best friend, Marcus, 22 years old, dead from what they called an accidental overdose at his apartment. I'd been his roommate for 2 years, and I was the one who found him. Blue lips, cold skin, that sweet chemical smell of whatever he'd taken, still hanging in the air like a goodbye. The funeral was small. His parents flew in from Ohio, their faces hollow with the kind of grief that carves itself into your bones. I gave a speech about how Marcus always made everyone laugh, how he could turn any bad day around with his stupid impressions. Everyone kept telling me how sorry they were for my loss, how hard this must be. I came home to our apartment afterward, still wearing my black suit, and sat in the silence. His bedroom door was closed. I hadn't opened it since the paramedics carried him out. The whole place felt wrong without his terrible music bleeding through the walls, without the smell of his burnt coffee in the morning. That's when the knocking started. 3 soft taps on the front door, then a pause, then 3 more. I figured it was a neighbor offering condolences, so I opened it. Nobody there, just the dim hallway light flickering like it always did, casting those familiar shadows on the peeling wallpaper. I closed the door and went back to the couch. Knock, knock, knock. This time, I looked through the peephole first. The hallway was empty, but I could smell something. That same sweet chemical smell from Marcus's room. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the deadbolt. "Marcus?" I whispered into the empty hallway. The smell got stronger. It was coming from inside the apartment now, seeping under his bedroom door, like it had that morning when I found him. But that was impossible. The police had cleaned everything. The landlord had aired the place out. Knock, knock, knock. I spun around. The sound was coming from Marcus's bedroom door now. My throat felt like I was swallowing glass. I approached the door, my dress shoes clicking on the hardwood like a countdown. The brass handle was ice cold under my palm. I opened it. The room looked exactly like my room. My clothes on the floor, my bottles on the nightstand, my unmade bed. But that couldn't be right. This was Marcus's room. I lived in the other bedroom. I stumbled backward, confusion clawing at my thoughts. I ran to what should have been my bedroom and threw open the door. Empty, completely empty. No furniture, no clothes, nothing. Like no one had ever lived there at all. That's when I saw it. Taped to the inside of the door, a newspaper clipping with my photo on it. The headline read, "Local student found dead from overdose." The date was 3 days ago. My legs gave out. I collapsed to the floor. The black suit I was wearing suddenly felt like a costume, like something that didn't belong to me. The knocking started again, echoing through the apartment, but now I understood. It wasn't Marcus knocking to get in. It was me knocking to get out. But if I've been dead for 3 days, and I just attended my own funeral thinking it was Marcus's, then who the hell has been living in my body? New horror story. The demon in the church's basement. I heard the chain move before I found the door. It was after midnight, the nave dark except for the sanctuary lamp, a red eye that never blinked. Wind pressed the old stained glass until the saints seemed to lean in and listen. Somewhere beneath the altar, metal scraped stone, slow and patient, as if something down there had all the time in the world. I told myself it was the boiler. I'd been assigned to St. Aurelia's 2 weeks earlier. New collar, new keys, a church that smelled like wet hymnals and old plaster. Father Merrick, the previous priest, had retired due to health, according to the folded note the bishop gave me along with a set of iron keys that didn't match any lock I could find. The scraping came again. I lifted the altar cloth, found a seam in the flagstones, and pried with the candlestick until a square of stone lifted with a draft of breath so cold it tasted metallic. Stairs dropped into a slit of darkness. The sound of the chain was louder now, a lazy rattle, then stillness, as if what was down there had turned its head. I went down with a flashlight and the confidence of someone who hasn't yet learned what to be afraid of. The basement was a single cramped corridor braced with ribs of brick. At the end, a door like a tombstone laid on its side, mortared into the wall and sealed with wax pressed full of little crosses. Iron staples bit into the stone, anchoring a chain that vanished into a slot. The chain twitched and went quiet, the links humming softly. On a nail nearby hung a leather journal, swollen with damp. A note was tied around it with twine. Read before doing anything. The handwriting was Father Merrick's. I turned a page, and dust leapt like gnats. The first entry was neat, almost formal. We do not keep a demon in the basement, not at first. We kept our prayers there. We pressed them down like wet leaves under a stone. Over years, they soured. The next entries were less careful. Confession takes what it is given. The town has learned to give it everything. Anger, burying, cheap cruelties, neglect. Those things sat in the dark together until they learned each other's shape. They became a single appetite. I have fed it words, my voice at night, scripture read backwards in right ways, names without bodies, the residue of sins forgiven. It grows quiet when I read. It grows hungry when I don't. My flashlight shook a little. I told myself it was the cold. If you are reading this, you already heard the chain. There is only one rule. Do not open the door. The door is not for us. The door is for it. Something behind the stone exhaled. The wax on the seals glittered like dried blood. I flipped to the last entry. The page was dated 3 days ago. My heart fails me. I cannot walk the steps. If no one reads to it, it climbs. There was a blot of ink there, as if the pen had hesitated over a word that had no spelling. I should have gone upstairs and called the bishop. Instead, because I am young and not as brave as I pretend, I did what the old priest had done. I cleared my throat and read. Psalm after psalm, my voice bouncing off brick and something that was not brick. The chain hummed, settled, went still. When I finished, I felt stupidly triumphant, like a child who found the right key on the first try. I closed the journal, put it back on the nail, and climbed up to the empty church, my breath ghosting in the light of the sanctuary lamp. The scraping didn't follow. The next night, the chain moved before the hour. I went down with the journal open to a fresh page, and found one already written. Thank you, Daniel. I hadn't written that. No one else had my name here. My mouth dried out so fast it hurt. I laid my fingers on the words. The ink was wet. On the other side of the door, something dragged its palm across the stone, slow, tender. Then a voice came through, not from behind the door, but from the chain itself, the links chattering as if they had teeth. Don't stop. It was a woman's voice. It was my mother's. I stepped back so hard I knocked my shoulder against the bricks. My mother has been dead 7 years. Don't stop, she said again, a perfect imitation of how she used to say it when she was teaching me to ride a bike. Steady, close, smiling even while she worried. You're doing fine. I opened the journal with both hands like a shield and read, not words but sound, anything to fill the space. The chain quieted. The corridor breathed like a lung. When I finished, I slammed the book shut and fled up the stairs, and for a moment at the top, I didn't know which side of the door I had left. On Sunday, the church filled with parishioners who moved like people who knew where they were going. Old women with hands like knotted rosaries. Men with coats that still smelled faintly of earth. Children who didn't fidget. They watched me with a politeness that felt like waiting. I preached on vigilance. No one coughed. No one rustled a candy wrapper. When I raised the host, there was a ripple in the air like the bow wave of something submerged. After Mass, a woman gripped my hand. "We're glad you're here, Father Daniel," she said. "It's been noisy at night." That evening, I decided to defy the journal and not go down. At 11, the bell in the tower tolled once. The rope to that bell had snapped last winter and was still coiled uselessly in the sacristy. At midnight, the pews creaked as if people were sitting in them. At 12:05, whispering began, not from the basement but from the nave, a dry, papery chorus like pages turning. I stepped out and found the pews occupied, not by people but by the suggestion of them. Coats arranged without bodies, hats settled into air, hands that were gloves around nothing. Every mouth was open and moving, making no sound until I stood in the aisle. Then, together, in voices I knew, my mother, the bishop, boys I'd gone to school with, Father Merrick, they said, "Feed it." I went downstairs. The journal was heavier. New pages had bloomed at the back, blank and expectant. When I touched them, a prickling ran up my arm like an antline of electricity. I wrote, "I don't know what you are." The words sank into the paper and kept sinking, as if the page were a shallow pool with no bottom. On the stone, the chain trembled, then went slack, as if whatever it held had come close to listen. "Open," my mother's voice breathed. Then another voice, my own, older and tired. "Do not open. Read." I turned the next page. The date at the top was tomorrow. The handwriting was mine. "You will be tempted to think the door keeps it from us. The door keeps us from it. We are the part that wanders. It is the part that waits. You will read until the pronouns blur. When you stop, it will go upstairs and choose its own lector." I dropped the journal like it had burned me. It landed open on yet another page, words crawling out in wet black, a diary being written from inside my throat. "Thank you, Daniel. You're steadier now. Your voice fits." The chain yawned against the stone, heavy with permission. I pressed my ear to the door because foolishness sometimes looks like devotion. On the other side, there was no breath, no body, only a room full of listening, a patience so immense it distorted time around it, like heat over a road. I didn't open the door. I read until my voice frayed and the chain fell into a gentle sleep. I sealed the wax crosses again, though I don't remember melting the candle. Wax cooled on my fingers anyway, as if I'd done it many times. At dawn, the church smelled like blown-out wicks. I climbed into the pulpit and slept there until the sun buttered the stained glass and turned the saints back into glass. It has been 6 nights. I read and it listens. The bell tolls without a rope if I delay. The congregation comes and sits and waits, their empty coats very patient. Tonight, as I was writing this, something changed. The chain did not move. The wax seals did not tremble. The journal did. A line has appeared at the bottom of the page, in a hand like mine after years of practice. When you finally open the door, remember the hinges are on our side. I'm looking at the door now, at the iron planted in the stone like roots, at the cold, obedient chain. I'm trying to decide which side I'm on. Tell me, when you hear the bell in the middle of the night from a church with no rope, are you upstairs with them or downstairs with me?
New horror story. My radio played tomorrow's report before I made it. The joints crack first, always the joints. I'm pressed against the radio tower's metal legs, 30 feet above the ground, watching Derek's silhouette move wrong through the tree line below. His shoulders roll forward with each step, like he's trying to settle into clothes that don't quite fit. The sound carries up through the still air. Crack, pop, crack, bone against bone finding new positions. 3 days ago, Derek Martinez was my partner. We'd been manning this firewatch station in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains for 2 seasons, and I knew the way he walked, the rhythm of his breathing during our long overnight shifts. I knew he kept his grandfather's turquoise bracelet in his left pocket and touched it when he got nervous. The thing wearing Derek's face touches that pocket now, its head tilted at an angle that makes my stomach lurch. Too far. Human necks don't bend that far. My radio crackles. Sarah, you copy? Derek's voice exactly right down to the slight rasp from too many cigarettes. I can see you up there. Why'd you run? Because 3 hours ago, I watched Derek die. We'd been tracking the Henderson family, tourists from Denver who'd missed their check-in at Devil's Canyon. Standard search protocol: split up, cover more ground, radio contact every 15 minutes. I'd found their campsite first. Torn fabric and scattered supplies, drag marks leading deeper into the woods. Derek, I need you at grid 7, I'd radioed. Found something. Copy, en route. I followed the trail, my boots crunching through pine needles still wet from morning frost. The drag marks led to a clearing where something had built a nest of sorts. Branches and moss arranged in a perfect circle. In the center lay 3 piles of clothes, folded neat and clean. Adult sizes and one small enough for their 8-year-old daughter. The smell hit me then. Sweet rot and copper like meat left in summer heat. And underneath it, something else. Something wild and animal, but wrong somehow. Predator musk tinged with decay. Sarah. Derek's voice behind me, but when I turned, he stood too still. His eyes focused somewhere past my left shoulder instead of meeting mine. Found them yet? Where are they, Derek? He smiled and his canine teeth looked too sharp. Closer than you think. That's when I ran. Crack, pop, crack. The sound echoes off the rocks as not Derek circles the tower base. I've been up here since sunset, and my water ran out an hour ago. The real Derek's truck sits empty in the parking area below, keys still in the ignition. His coffee mug on the dashboard, half full and cold. My radio hisses again. Sarah, you're being irrational. Come down, and we'll talk this through. Still Derek's voice, but the cadence is off. Too measured, like someone reading from a script. I key the mic with shaking hands. Where's the Henderson family? Silence. Then soft laughter that doesn't belong to Derek at all. When the voice returns, it's changed. Higher pitched, frightened. Mommy, where are you? I'm scared and it's dark and... I drop the radio. It clatters against the metal platform, the 8-year-old girl's voice still calling out from the speaker, calling for a mother who can't answer. I force myself to look down. Derek stands directly beneath me now, his neck bent backward at an impossible angle to meet my eyes. His mouth moves, but the child's voice keeps coming from my radio. Please, I want to go home. Why won't Daddy wake up? My throat closes. I fumble for my cell phone, but there's no signal this far into the mountains. There never is. That's why we use the radio to communicate with base camp. Why we report our findings to Supervisor Williams every night at 8 p.m. sharp. Williams! God, how long have I been feeding information to... My blood turns to ice water. For 3 weeks, I've been radioing our patrol routes to base camp. Every missing person case, every search area, every location where tourists might be vulnerable and alone. Williams always sounded so concerned, so helpful with suggestions about where to look next. But I've never met Williams face to face. He transferred in just before Derek and I started our season, all our communication through radio. His voice always slightly distorted by static, requiring me to repeat coordinates and locations. Could you repeat that grid reference, Sarah? Want to make sure I have it exactly right. And what time did they leave their vehicle? Just so I can update the timeline. Any idea which trail they plan to take? Every detail helps. I grabbed the radio with numb fingers and switched to the emergency frequency. Mayday, mayday. This is Sangre de Cristo Station 7. Officer down, multiple missing persons requesting immediate... Sarah? William's voice cuts through, calm and reassuring. No need for dramatics. We've had the situation under control for quite some time. Below me, Derek's body convulses. His joints crack and pop as his limbs extend, stretching longer than they should. His face ripples like water, features sliding into new configurations. You've been such tremendous help, Williams continues, and now I can hear it. The same wet, organic sound underlying his words. The sound of something wearing a voice that doesn't belong to it. Every location, every timeline. We couldn't have managed without you. I'm still staring down at the thing that was Derek when it speaks, and the words come out of my radio in perfect sync. Don't worry, Sarah. We'll find good use for you, too. The radio goes dead. In the sudden silence, I hear them. Footsteps on the tower's metal rungs. Slow and patient, accompanied by that rhythmic cracking of joints settling into place. I look down one last time and see them climbing toward me. 3 figures now, wearing the faces of the Henderson family. The father's expression slack and empty, the mother's head lolling at a wrong angle. The little girl looks up at me with eyes that reflect light like an animal's, and smiles with too many teeth. "We've been waiting to meet you," she says in William's voice. Above us, my radio crackles back to life and I hear my own voice coming through the speaker. Tomorrow's patrol report, detailing the next family's camping location. A report I haven't made yet.
New horror story. They buried Samuel anyway and paid the price. It's been 20 years since I last set foot in my hometown. I left the morning after the night they dug up Samuel. Even now, when the wind rattles my windows, I feel that same cold crawling up my spine. Samuel was always different. Tall, thin, skin pale even in summer. Eyes so dark you could never tell where the pupil ended. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it was in a slow, deliberate tone, like every word was a secret. People whispered about him. Animals avoided him. Children wouldn't go near his house unless dared. When he died in the winter of '02, the ground was frozen solid. It took nearly the whole village to dig the grave. People came, not out of grief, but to be certain he stayed in the ground. There was an old superstition in town. If the dogs howl before the burial, don't bury the body, burn it. We all thought it was just a story, but as the coffin rested beside the open grave, every dog in the village began to howl at once. Long, mournful, and in perfect unison. No one acted. They buried him anyway. 3 nights later, things began to happen. Chickens were found drained of blood, but with no wounds. The horses refused to walk near the cemetery road, and my uncle swore Samuel had knocked on his door at midnight, calling his name in a voice that sounded wet, like it came through a mouth full of earth. I laughed at the stories, until the 5th night. I woke to the sound of small stones hitting my window. At first, there was nothing in the yard. Then, from the shadows, a shape emerged. Tall, thin, Samuel, or what was left of him. Skin stretched tight, lips curled back over teeth that were far too long. Eyes glowing faintly red, like dying coals. He spoke my name without moving his lips. The sound bloomed inside my skull, cold and heavy. I stumbled backward, heart pounding. The front door slammed shut on its own. The oil lamp flickered once, and died. From above, the roof groaned under slow, deliberate steps. And then, breathing, deep, measured, right above me. By morning, the elders decided. They gathered shovels, torches, and a wooden stake carved from ash. We dug up the grave before dusk. When the coffin lid was pried open, Samuel's mouth was slick with fresh blood. His fingernails had grown into sharp claws, the coffin lining shredded to ribbons. The stake was driven through his heart. He screamed without opening his mouth, a sound so high and unnatural, it made my ears ring. They cut off his head, remains, and scattered the ashes at the crossroads. We thought it was over. 2 nights later, as I packed my bags, there came 3 slow knocks at my window. When I looked, no one was there, only a fresh, deep scratch across the glass. I left at dawn, but sometimes, in the middle of the night, I hear the soft tap of pebbles against my window, and I know he's still out there, looking for someone to call by name. New horror story. Something was wrong with my passengers. I just figured out what I've been doing for the past 3 months, and I think I'm going to throw up. You have to understand, I thought I was helping people. It started with the ride requests. Always the same account name, Riley M. Always between 2 and 4 a.m. Always cash payments, which was weird because the app showed a credit card on file. But night drivers don't ask questions when someone's paying double the fare in crumpled 20s. The first pickup was outside a 24-hour laundromat on Bleecker Street. A young woman, maybe 19. clutching a backpack like it contained her entire life. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely pull the door handle. She whispered the address, some industrial district I'd never heard of, and spent the entire ride staring out the back window. "You okay?" I asked, as we pulled up to a warehouse with no visible numbers. She pressed $40 into my palm, way more than the fare. "Thank you," she whispered, and something in her voice made my chest tight. "You probably saved my life." I sat there, watching her disappear into the shadows between buildings, telling myself I'd done something good. Maybe help someone escape an abusive situation. The news is full of stories like that. But then, Riley M. requested another ride the next week. Different pickup location, a bus station this time. Different passenger, too. An older man, probably mid-40s, wearing clothes that looked like he'd been sleeping in them. Same nervous energy, same desperate gratitude, same industrial district destination. "This is perfect," he muttered as we drove through empty streets. "Nobody would think to look there." The warehouse district became familiar, always the same drop-off point, just outside a chain-link fence with razor wire. Sometimes I'd see my previous passengers in the distance, moving between buildings like ghosts. They looked different, thinner, like the spark behind their eyes had dimmed. By the fifth ride, I started recognizing a pattern. Riley M. only requested rides when someone specific was working dispatch, always Sarah's late shift. The pickup locations were always transportation hubs or transitional places, bus stations, shelters, cheap motels, and every passenger looked like they were running from something. I convinced myself I was part of an underground railroad for desperate people. That thought helped me sleep during the day. Last Tuesday, I got another ping from Riley M. The pickup was a college campus, outside the library. A girl, couldn't have been older than 18, sat in my back seat wearing a university sweatshirt and clutching a letter. "My parents don't know where I am," she said, quietly. "I just need to disappear for a while." I should have asked more questions. Should have wondered why someone who wanted to disappear was using a rideshare app connected to their real identity. Should have questioned why the same person kept paying cash for rides they were supposedly ordering through an account. Instead, I drove her to the warehouse. But this time, I decided to wait. Something had been bothering me for weeks, a detail I couldn't shake. I parked down the street and watched through my side mirror. Riley M. was already there, waiting, by the fence. And Riley M. wasn't a passenger at all. Riley M. was the person all my passengers were running to. I watched him guide the college girl through a gap in the fence, his hand possessive on her shoulder, watched her reluctance turn to confusion, then fear, watched her try to pull away as he steered her toward the warehouses where all the others had gone. That's when I understood. The nervous passengers weren't people escaping danger. They were people becoming the danger's next target. Young, desperate, isolated, people who'd told someone they wanted to disappear, and I'd been delivering them. The credit card on file wasn't Riley M.'s. Every ride had been paid for by the passengers themselves, ordered through stolen accounts or fake profiles. Riley M. had been using the rideshare app like a meal delivery service, and I'd been bringing him exactly what he wanted, people no one would miss. I drove home and started going through my ride history, matching faces to news reports, missing persons cases, college students who dropped out suddenly, runaways whose families had stopped looking. 12 rides, 12 people. But here's what I can't stop thinking about. What's making my hands shake as I record this? If Riley M. was always waiting at the warehouse, if he never actually requested the rides himself, who was really placing those orders? New horror story. Something's wrong with my night shift. I'm recording this on my phone in the back room because I can't be the only one seeing this. And if something happens to me tonight, someone needs to know. I've been working the graveyard shift at this gas station for 8 months, and the same man has walked through that door 17 times in the past 4 hours. Not 17 different men. The same man. The fluorescent lights above the Slurpee machine have been flickering since my shift started at 11 p.m., throwing strobing shadows across the energy drink coolers. The coffee's been brewing so long it smells like burnt rubber, and every time the automatic doors slide open, they let in humid night air that tastes like rain and gasoline. First time he came in around midnight, he bought Marlboro Reds and a bottle of water. Tall guy, maybe 40, gray hoodie, coffee stain on the left sleeve. He paid with exact change, $8.47. Said thanks in this gravelly voice before walking back into the darkness outside. Second time, 12:23 a.m. Same guy, same hoodie, but the stain was on the right sleeve. Same cigarettes, same water, but this time he paid with a 20 and didn't wait for change. When I called after him, he was already gone, and the 20 had turned into exact change in my hand. By the fifth visit, I started paying attention to details. The scar above his eyebrow kept switching sides. His stubble got thicker, then thinner, then gone. Once his eyes were brown, then green, then this pale blue, glowing under the ceiling lights. The security camera malfunctions every time he enters. The timestamp freezes. The image goes static. And when it clears, I'm always standing behind the register, holding $8.47. Even though I never remember him paying. I tried hiding in the back room during what should have been his next visit. The motion sensor chimed anyway. When I came out, there was money on the counter and cigarettes missing from the display. The register showed a transaction I didn't make. The worst part isn't that he keeps coming back. It's that each time he looks a little more like me. Same height now, same build. Tonight, his voice sounded exactly like mine when he said thanks. And I swear I saw my own reflection staring back at me from his eyes. I called my manager an hour ago, but his voicemail greeting was in my voice. I tried calling 911, but when the operator answered, she sounded just like my sister, asking questions in my sister's voice, but saying words my sister would never know. The motion sensor just chimed again, 18th time. I can hear footsteps on the cracked linoleum, the soft hiss of the cooler door opening, the crinkle of a water bottle being picked up. The register's about to beep, but I'm still in the back room. I never left the back room, and I can hear my own voice out there, saying thanks to someone I can't see. The footsteps are coming toward the back room now, and I just realized something that's making my hand shake so hard I can barely hold this phone. I haven't looked in a mirror since my shift started. What if I've been watching him this whole time, but I'm the one who keeps leaving?
New horror story. I took the wrong elevator at 3 a.m. I'm recording this because I need someone to know what happened last night. And I'm not sure how much time I have left before they find me again. I was coming back from my night shift at the warehouse. Dead tired, just wanted to get home. My apartment building has 2 elevators, and I always take the one on the left. But last night, exhausted, not paying attention, I stepped into the one on the right instead. The doors closed before I could hit my floor button. That's when I noticed the panel was wrong. Instead of numbers, there were symbols I didn't recognize. And one button was already glowing. A yellow circle with no marking. The elevator didn't move up or down. It moved sideways. I could feel it. This impossible lateral motion that made my stomach lurch. And the doors finally opened. The familiar ding was replaced by a low mechanical hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. I stepped out into hell. The hallway stretched endlessly in both directions. Rows of buzzing fluorescent lights, casting everything in sickly yellow. The walls were the same shade of yellow, not painted, but like the color was bleeding from within. The carpet was damp, squishy under my feet. Each step made wet, squelching sounds. It smelled like mold and old electrical wiring. Behind me, the elevator was gone. Just more yellow wall, perfectly seamless. I started walking, hoping to find a stairwell, another elevator, anything. But every turn led to another identical corridor. Same yellow walls, same humming lights. The carpet grew damper the deeper I went. The fluorescent bulbs flickered in patterns, some steady, some strobing. Shadows that moved wrong. That's when I heard the footsteps. Not mine. These were coming from behind me. But every time I turned, the hallway was empty. That endless yellow tunnel, stretching back into darkness. The The steps matched my pace exactly. When I walked faster, they walked faster. When I stopped, they stopped. I started running. The corridors began to change. Some had doors now. Metal doors with no handles. No numbers, just smooth surfaces, warm to the touch. Behind them, I could hear things. Scratching, whispers, sometimes crying. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe. Like I was walking through invisible cotton. Then I found the room. It was exactly like my apartment bedroom. Same furniture, same posters, same unmade bed. But everything was slightly off. The walls were that nauseating yellow. And the window showed nothing but more fluorescent corridors, stretching into infinity. On the bed sat a figure. It was me. Exactly me. Same clothes, same face. But its eyes were black holes. And its mouth hung open in a silent scream. When it saw me, it started laughing. A sound like breaking glass. "You took the wrong elevator," it said, mom, in my voice. We all did. I backed away, but the door had vanished. The room began to stretch, walls pulling apart like taffy. More versions of myself stepped out of the yellow walls. Dozens of them. All slightly different. All wrong. Some missing pieces of themselves. Others with too many limbs. All of them laughing that horrible sound. "Welcome to level 14, they said in unison. "You'll love it here. Everyone who takes the wrong elevator does." I closed my eyes and ran straight at the wall. Felt it give way, like wet paper. Tumbling through yellow space. Falling through floors that don't exist. Until I crashed back into my real apartment. But I can still hear them. In the walls. In the vents. In the space between spaces. And every elevator, in every building I pass, hums that same mechanical tune. Here's what terrifies me most. I just checked my security footage. Last night, I never left my apartment. I've been here the whole time. Sleeping. In my bed. So if I never went anywhere, and I'm safe in my room right now, then who's been walking those yellow corridors? And why do they keep calling my name?
New horror story. Why does my mom hate me? From as far back as I can remember, my mother has hated me. Not in the loud, angry way some parents lose their tempers, but in a cold, deliberate way. She wouldn't touch me. She wouldn't look me in the eye, and she never called me by my name. Only one word: monster. When I was 6, my father left. I remember them arguing for hours behind the closed door. Then he walked out and never came back. Mom's hands were trembling when she came out, but she didn't cry. She just looked at me like I was a stranger. Over the years, things only got worse. She'd sleep with her door locked. She'd flinch if I came too close. Once, at a school event, she refused to stand next to me in the family photo. People whispered about her in town. Said she'd lost her mind after my father left. Said the grief made her paranoid. By the time I turned 10, she was barely speaking to me at all. If I asked her something, she'd answer with the bare minimum, her eyes always darting away, scanning the shadows like she was expecting something to jump out. At 12, she had a breakdown. She smashed every mirror in the house, screaming that she couldn't bear to see it anymore. That same week, the police came. They said she had been reported for disturbing the peace, but instead of taking her to jail, they took her somewhere else, a psychiatric hospital on the edge of town. They said she needed treatment. I told myself they were right, but even after they released her months later, she was worse, thin, pale, eyes that wouldn't stop moving like she was watching something just over my shoulder. One night I overheard her on the phone, whispering, "It's still here. I don't care if no one believes me. I know what I saw the night he came home." I wanted to ask her what she meant, but something in my gut told me not to. Last week, she was taken away again. The neighbors said they found her standing in the middle of the street in the rain, clutching a crucifix, shouting for someone to give him back. I didn't visit her this time. Then yesterday, I got a letter. The envelope was damp, the handwriting barely legible, no return address, but I knew it was from her. It only had one sentence: "You are not my son." I don't know why, but reading it made me smile, because she's right. I don't know why she still cares so much about the lump of rotting flesh I dumped in hell all those years ago. It stopped being her son the night I slipped into his skin. Now, I'm all she has left.
New horror story. Some houses don't forget their last tenants. And this is why. I never believed in ghosts. Not until the winter I stayed at the old Harper House on Hollow Creek Road. It's been over 15 years, and I still dream about that place. Though sometimes I think the dreams aren't mine. I was 24, fresh out of college, broke, and desperate for cheap rent. The Harper place was huge, falling apart, and dirt cheap. The landlord just smiled and said, "Not many stay long." I thought he meant the heating bill. The first week was quiet, except for the drafts. I'd wake up at night shivering, even though the furnace worked fine. One morning, I found the kitchen chairs pulled out from the table, perfectly spaced in a wide circle. I laughed, thinking I must have been drunk and moved them myself. But then came the scratching. It started in the walls behind my bed, slow, deliberate, like someone dragging fingernails over wood. When I knocked back, it stopped, only to start again from the ceiling. By the third week, I'd hear footsteps in the upstairs hallway almost every night. Slow, heavy, pacing from one end to the other. I lived alone. One night, I decided to wait for it. I sat at the top of the stairs in the dark. The house was silent for a long time. Until the air shifted. It wasn't just cold, it was thick, like breathing through wet cloth. From the far end of the hall, a shadow peeled itself from the wall. It moved toward me without sound, taller than any man, its edges flickering like smoke in candlelight. I tried to stand, but my body wouldn't move. The thing stopped inches from my face. And then, every door in the house slammed at once. The force knocked me down the stairs. I woke hours later on the living room floor. The front door was wide open, snow blowing in. After that, it escalated. Glasses shattered in empty rooms. The television would turn on to static at exactly 3:17 a.m. One night, I found muddy footprints leading from the back door to my bed and stopping right beside where I slept. I finally called the landlord. He sighed and told me the truth. The Harpers had been murdered in that house in 1974. Husband, wife, 2 kids. The killer was never caught. Every tenant since then had lasted less than 2 months. I moved out the next morning. A year later, I drove past Hollow Creek Road. The Harper house was dark, windows boarded, snow piled high against the porch. Yet as I passed, I saw a figure in the upstairs window, tall, still, watching me. When I blinked, it was gone. But that night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., my television turned itself on, static. And over the hiss, faint and distant, came the sound of footsteps pacing just above my ceiling.
New horror story. My best friend knocked the door after his funeral. I'm recording this because I need someone to know what happened, and I don't think the police would believe me. The knocking started 3 hours ago and hasn't stopped. Let me back up. Yesterday, I buried my best friend, Marcus, 22 years old, dead from what they called an accidental overdose at his apartment. I'd been his roommate for 2 years, and I was the one who found him. Blue lips, cold skin, that sweet chemical smell of whatever he'd taken, still hanging in the air like a goodbye. The funeral was small. His parents flew in from Ohio, their faces hollow with the kind of grief that carves itself into your bones. I gave a speech about how Marcus always made everyone laugh, how he could turn any bad day around with his stupid impressions. Everyone kept telling me how sorry they were for my loss, how hard this must be. I came home to our apartment afterward, still wearing my black suit, and sat in the silence. His bedroom door was closed. I hadn't opened it since the paramedics carried him out. The whole place felt wrong without his terrible music bleeding through the walls, without the smell of his burnt coffee in the morning. That's when the knocking started. 3 soft taps on the front door, then a pause, then 3 more. I figured it was a neighbor offering condolences, so I opened it. Nobody there. Just the dim hallway light flickering like it always did, casting those familiar shadows on the peeling wallpaper. I closed the door and went back to the couch. Knock, knock, knock. This time, I looked through the peephole first. The hallway was empty, but I could smell something. That same sweet chemical smell from Marcus's room. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the deadbolt. "Marcus?" I whispered into the empty hallway. The smell got stronger. It was coming from inside the apartment now, seeping under his bedroom door, like it had that morning when I found him. But that was impossible. The police had cleaned everything. The landlord had aired the place out. Knock, knock, knock. I spun around. The sound was coming from Marcus's bedroom door now. My throat felt like I was swallowing glass. I approached the door, my dress shoes clicking on the hardwood like a countdown. The brass handle was ice cold under my palm. I opened it. The room looked exactly like my room. My clothes on the floor, my bottles on the nightstand, my unmade bed. But that couldn't be right. This was Marcus's room. I lived in the other bedroom. I stumbled backward, confusion clawing at my thoughts. I ran to what should have been my bedroom and threw open the door. Empty. Completely empty. No furniture, no clothes, nothing. Like no one had ever lived there at all. That's when I saw it. Taped to the inside of the door, a newspaper clipping with my photo on it. The headline read, "Local student found dead from overdose." The date was 3 days ago. My legs gave out. I collapsed to the floor. The black suit I was wearing suddenly felt like a costume, like something that didn't belong to me. The knocking started again, echoing through the apartment, but now I understood. It wasn't Marcus knocking to get in. It was me knocking to get out. But if I've been dead for 3 days, and I just attended my own funeral thinking it was Marcus's, then who the hell has been living in my body? New horror story. Never touch the hallway mirror. I never believed in curses. Not until I moved into the apartment on Blackwood Lane. A small, one-bedroom place above an antique shop, cheap rent, and the owner, Mr. Hollis, who seemed almost too eager for me to sign the lease. His only condition was strange. Don't touch the mirror in the hallway. It stood halfway down the narrow corridor, tall, framed in black wood, carved with twisting shapes that didn't look like flowers or vines. The glass was warped, bending reflections unnaturally. At first, I avoided it, but soon I noticed things. No matter how bright the lights, its surface stayed dim, like it absorbed the glow. Sometimes I caught movement in it, something slipping behind me, though the hallway was empty. One evening, I lingered before it. My reflection stared back, smiling. I wasn't smiling. The grin widened slowly, too slowly to be mine. Behind its eyes, the darkness pulsed like it was breathing. After that, shadows began crawling along my apartment walls at night. I'd wake to faint scratching, not from the walls, from inside the mirror's frame. A week later, I found myself in front of the mirror without remembering getting out of bed. My reflection lifted its hand while mine hung at my side. The glass cracked under its palm. A whisper seeped out, low and guttural. Let me out. Each day, it grew bolder. Sometimes its lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear. Other times, it was gone entirely, leaving only the warped reflection of the hallway. Mr. Hollis stopped by one afternoon, unannounced. He didn't ask about the rent. He only glanced toward the hallway and muttered almost to himself, "It's getting faster." When I asked what he meant, he just said, "Don't touch it," and left. That night, I dreamed of walking the hallway endlessly, my footsteps muffled, the mirror looming ahead no matter which way I turned. The reflection inside wasn't me anymore, it was waiting. The final night, I woke standing in front of it again. This time, fingers, cold and bony, wrapped around mine from the other side. My feet slid toward the crack that now split the glass wide open. A shadow oozed out, swallowing the hallway. My reflection stepped through, wearing my face, smiling wider than ever. I was yanked inside. The sensation was like falling into icy water, but I could still see. I was inside the mirror, watching my body move freely on the other side. I pounded on the glass, screaming without a voice. Mr. Hollis appeared in the hallway, staring at me. "You lasted longer than most," he said quietly before turning away. The thing wearing my skin looked at me, leaned close to the glass and mouthed words I couldn't hear, but I knew what it said. "I'm not looking at the mirror anymore. I'm looking out from it." New horror story. The back rooms keep pulling me back at 11:47 p.m. Look, I know how this sounds, but I need to tell someone before it happens again tonight. Every night, exactly 11:47 p.m., I end up back in that place, and I'm starting to think I'm the reason it exists. It began 3 weeks ago. I was on the graveyard shift at the 24-hour copy center. Just me, the hum of fluorescent lights, the smell of warm toner. I was moving boxes in the back storage room when I brushed against what I thought was the wall. Except my hand went right through it. The drywall felt soft, almost wet, like skin that hadn't seen sunlight in years. I stepped through and found myself in a hallway that stretched forever. Yellow wallpaper, stained, peeling, carpet squelching under my feet, the sickly sweet smell of mold, and the lights above buzzing like they were whispering. That first night, I wandered for hours. Every corridor led to another corridor. Every turn revealed the same walls, the same carpet, the same lights. And from inside the walls came scratching, like fingernails on wood, louder, every time I stopped walking. Then I found the room. Smaller, different. A single metal chair in the center, and on the wall, a digital clock. 11:47 p.m., frozen. I sat down, my breath echoing back at me, and then suddenly I was back at the copy center like nothing had happened, except my shoes were still wet. The next night, it happened again, that pulling sensation in my chest like a hook dragging me forward. I couldn't resist. The wall was soft, and inside, the hallways had changed, longer, twisting, the scratching, hungrier. And in the room, there were 2 chairs. The second one was warm, molded to my shape, and on the floor, my name tag. But I was already wearing mine. Night 3, 3 chairs. Night 4, 4 chairs. Each one warm, each one me. And in the distance, I began hearing my own voice, calling, begging. I tried to escape. Sleeping pills, driving to another city, didn't matter. No matter where I was, at 11:47, the walls found me, and my hand would sink through, like honey. The worst part isn't the corridors, it isn't the scratching, it isn't even the circle of chairs. It's the memories. Memories of things that haven't happened yet, conversations with myself, plans we're making, the day we figure out how to bring others through. And tonight, it's different. When I checked the clock at work, it was already 11:47. It's been 11:47 for 6 hours. The lights are buzzing, the walls are soft, and I hear the scratching. I finally understand. I was never escaping the back rooms. So tell me, when you hear this recording, what time does your clock say? New horror story. They replaced everyone I know. I'm recording this because someone needs to hear the truth before they come for me too. My hands won't stop shaking, but I have to get this out. It started 3 weeks ago. My roommate, Ryan, came back from visiting his parents. I was on the couch, Netflix playing, chips everywhere, when I heard his key in the lock. The sound was different, too careful, too deliberate. Ryan usually bursts in like a hurricane, backpack hitting the floor so hard the walls shake. But this Ryan moved like he was in a museum. Steps measured, calculated. And when he appeared in the doorway, the first red flag hit me like ice water in my veins. He was standing, perfectly straight. But Ryan has terrible posture, always hunched, always slouching. Not this time. Spine rigid, shoulders squared. "Hey, man," he said, and his voice, God, his voice was wrong. The tone was right, the words were right, but it felt hollow, like an impression of Ryan, not Ryan himself. "How was the family?" I asked. He blinked, slow. "Fine. Good, normal family things." Normal family things? Ryan's parents are divorced, always fighting. He always vents about it for hours, but now he just stood there, watching me. Eyes too bright in the lamplight. The next morning, I woke to the smell of eggs Benedict. Ryan can't cook, he burns water, but in the kitchen, he was plating it like a 5-star chef. Knife work flawless, movements surgical. "Since when do you cook?" I asked. "I learned some new recipes," he said flatly. "Thought I'd try them out." I took a bite. It was perfect. Too perfect. And Ryan watched me eat, taking notes every time I chewed. By day 3, I was avoiding him. He started folding laundry into perfect squares, alphabetizing books, cleaning the bathroom until it gleamed. But worse than what he was doing was how he watched me, constantly studying me, memorizing me. Then my sister called. "Hey, loser." Her voice sounded right, the wrong. She only calls me that when she's annoyed, not affectionate. And her laugh came a half second too late. "Everything okay, Em?" "Of course. Why wouldn't it be? Just wanted to check in on my brother." Check in? Emma never checks in. She has her own life. Something was off. "How's Daniel?" I asked. Silence. Then, "Daniel is fine. We're very happy together." But Emma broke up with Daniel 6 months ago. I helped her move out. I held her while she cried. The line went dead. My hands were shaking when I started calling everyone. Mom, Dad, friends, coworkers. Every voice sounded right, but felt empty. Like they were performing our relationships, not living them. That night, I locked my door, didn't sleep. I heard Ryan moving at 3 a.m., but his footsteps were too light, too even, like he was floating. I started documenting pictures of Ryan, recordings. In the photos, his shadow was wrong, too sharp, too dark, painted on the wall. In the recordings, silence filled the room whenever he spoke. Yesterday, I tested him. I said I was visiting my childhood friend, Danny. Ryan's face froze, just for a moment. Then he smiled. "That sounds nice. Give Danny my regards." But Ryan never met Danny. Danny doesn't exist. I didn't leave. I watched from my window. At 4 p.m., a black sedan pulled up. 3 people got out. They looked normal, but they moved like Ryan, too precise. They went into the building across the street. An hour later, they came out with someone who looked exactly like Mrs. Henderson, our elderly neighbor. But she walked straighter, more purposeful. I know how this sounds, like I've lost my mind. But I've tested it, watched it, documented it. They're not human. They can't be. They're copying us, replacing us. But they're not getting it right. Too perfect, too careful, missing all the messy details that make us real. And the worst part, I think they know. That I know. This morning, I found a note under my door. "We need to talk. Come to the coffee shop on 5th Street at noon. Come alone. Your concerned friends and family." It's 11:45 a.m. now. In 15 minutes, I'm supposed to walk into the trap. But what really terrifies me isn't that. It's this thought gnawing at me. What if I'm wrong? What if they didn't replace everyone I love? What if they replaced me and I just don't remember? New horror story. The wrong job. I've worked in the same factory for 7 years, and I still don't know what we're making. That sounds impossible, I know, but it's true. Every worker is assigned a single task: cutting, sanding, welding, packing. No one sees the entire process. No one asks questions. We punch in, do our piece, and the product disappears down the line into sealed boxes. The boxes are loaded onto black trucks that arrive at midnight. No company logos, no license plates, just headlights in the fog. Once, I asked my supervisor what we were building. He stared at me like I'd committed a crime. His face didn't move, except for his lips, whispering, "Don't think, just work." After that, no one else would even stand near me. The parts themselves are strange. They don't look like metal or plastic. Some feel soft like cartilage. Others are smooth like polished bone. I once had to sand down a piece that looked disturbingly like a human jaw stripped of teeth. I convinced myself it was coincidence. But the smell wasn't industrial, it was biological. One night I was scheduled for a late shift. The factory floor was empty except for me and the conveyor belt, carrying sealed crates into the loading area. My curiosity burned hotter than my fear. I pried one open with a crowbar. Inside was not machinery, not electronics, not even tools. It was a mask, but not plastic, not rubber. It was sewn from faces, human faces. Stitched together with black wire, the eyes still wet, the skin sagging. I vomited on the spot. When I turned, my supervisor was standing in the shadows. His voice was flat. "Now you've seen too much." But he didn't stop me. He didn't call security, he just smiled. That smile followed me for days. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I needed answers. The next week, I broke into the restricted wing of the factory. The air was heavy, damp, almost alive. The walls pulsed faintly as if something beneath the concrete was breathing. I passed room after room filled with open crates, thousands of them. Some contained piles of children's shoes, others rosaries, snapped in half. Crucifixes bent until the metal screamed. One box was filled with nothing but tongues. And then I found the central chamber. It was vast, a cathedral of steel and flesh. In the center stood a machine, taller than any building I've ever seen. Belts and gears turned endlessly, grinding matter into shapes I couldn't comprehend. Giant screens flickered on the walls, showing streets, houses, people. At first, I thought they were surveillance feeds. I recognized my neighborhood, the diner I used to eat at, the school I once attended, but the angles were wrong. The details shifted slightly, like bad reflections in water. Then I realized, these weren't recordings, they were fabrications. The factory wasn't producing objects. It was producing entire realities. On the largest screen, I saw my own house, my wife at the window, my son playing on the floor. But I was here, in the factory, watching, which meant what I saw wasn't real. It was the product. I stumbled back, choking on my breath. Other screens lit up around me, showing cities, oceans, faces I didn't know. Thousands of them, millions, all false, all manufactured. I screamed, demanding to know why. The supervisor stepped out from the shadows, his smile wider than ever. "Don't you get it?" he whispered. "We don't build machines. We build lives. Every box shipped, every product sealed. It's another illusion, another world stitched together." He leaned close, his eyes hollow. "And you were never a worker here. You were just another product." I tried to deny it, but my memories began unraveling, peeling away like rotten wallpaper. Punching in, working the line, going home. None of it was real. I wasn't part of the factory. I was part of the shipment. And if that's true, then so are you. Because if you're listening to this, we made you. New horror story. The last tenant was me. The rent was cheap. Too cheap. But I didn't care. I just needed a place to stay. It was a narrow room at the end of a long hallway in a crumbling old house. The landlord didn't ask for much. Cash up front, no questions, no paperwork. He slid the key across the table and said only one thing. "Never open the door when the steps stop outside." I thought it was a joke. But the first night, I learned it wasn't. At 2:33 in the morning, I woke up to the sound of footsteps, slow, dragging, heavy. They creaked along the hallway floorboards, closer and closer to my door. And then they stopped. I held my breath. The silence was suffocating. Just when I convinced myself it was nothing, the handle rattled. Once, twice, slowly. Then nothing. I didn't sleep again that night. The second night, it happened again. Same time, same steps, same rattle of the handle. This time, I pressed my ear to the door. There was breathing. Wet, ragged, right on the other side. I whispered, "Who's there?" The breathing stopped. Then something scraped against the door, like nails dragging across the wood. I jumped back, heart pounding. The room stayed quiet after that, but I didn't dare sleep. On the third night, I noticed something new, a journal in the bedside drawer. I didn't remember seeing it before. The first page was filled with frantic handwriting. Nights are loud. Don't follow the steps. Don't open the door when they stop outside. My blood ran cold. Whoever wrote this had been through the same thing. I flipped through the pages. Each one described nights exactly like mine. The footsteps, the rattling handle, the breathing. And then I found an entry that froze me solid. Third night. I heard the voice. It sounded like me. I slammed the book shut. That night, I promised myself I wouldn't look, wouldn't listen. But when the footsteps came, I couldn't help it. They stopped outside my door again. The handle rattled again. And then, through the silence, a whisper came. My own voice. "Open the door." I nearly screamed. I grabbed the journal and flipped to the last page. Fresh ink bled across it, words forming as I stared. "He will open it tonight." My hands shook so hard I dropped the book. The fourth night, I couldn't take it anymore. When the footsteps stopped, I swung the door open wide. The hallway was empty, but the floorboards were wet. Footprints, dark and glistening, trailed away down the corridor. When I turned back, my blood froze. Someone was lying in my bed. It was me. Pale skin, hollow eyes, lips blue like a corpse. My body. I staggered back, shaking, and grabbed the journal again. The pages were different now. Blank, except for one line scrawled across the very first page in thick black ink. Every tenant thinks they are alive. Every tenant learns they are not. My vision blurred. Memories slipped away. Renting the room, meeting the landlord, moving in. All of it unraveling, peeling back like paint. I hadn't rented this room. I hadn't lived here at all. I had died here. And with that truth, the house seemed to exhale. The footsteps started again, moving farther down the hall, toward the next door. Another tenant, another me, another lie. The journal fell from my hands, and I finally understood. The room never keeps tenants. The room keeps ghosts. New horror story. The same funeral every night. I don't remember walking into the church. One moment I was standing outside in the cold rain, staring at the tall black doors. The next I was inside, my shoes leaving wet prints on the stone floor. The air was heavy, not with incense, but with something sour, almost rotten. Rows of mourners in black sat silently, their faces pale, eyes fixed forward. Not one of them moved as I walked down the aisle. I didn't know the man in the coffin, yet I knew I had to be there. As I took a seat in the back, the organ began to play, a low, crawling melody that made my stomach twist. The priest stepped forward, his voice a monotone murmur. The words didn't sound like any prayer I'd ever heard. I tried to focus, but my eyes kept drifting to the coffin, and to the faint mist seeping out from its seams. Then the man inside opened his eyes. No one reacted. Not a single person turned their head. The corpse's lips moved slowly, forming words I couldn't hear, but his gaze was fixed on me. I froze, my throat dry. I don't remember leaving the church that night. I only remember waking in my own bed, clothes still damp from the rain. I told myself it was a dream. The next night it happened again. I was walking home from work, took a wrong turn, and somehow ended up in front of that same church. The doors opened without a sound, and there they were, the same mourners, the same coffin, the same man inside. Only this time, he sat up. The sound of wood creaking echoed in the silent hall as he rose, his skin stretched thin over bone. His mouth opened wider than it should have, and a voice like gravel scraped across my mind. "You came back." I stumbled backward, but my legs wouldn't work. The mourners turned their heads in unison, their necks twisting unnaturally, eyes black and empty. I remember their hands reaching for me. Then, nothing. The third night, I didn't even try to fight it. I knew I'd be there again. The rain, the doors, the smell, everything the same. Except this time, there was no coffin, just an empty stone slab at the front of the church. The priest looked at me for the first time, his lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. "We've been waiting," he said. The mourners rose to their feet. Their skin was gray now, their mouths stretched wide, whispering something I couldn't understand. The sound swelled until it was all I could hear. Then I saw it, in the middle of the aisle, a second coffin. My coffin. I ran. I swear I ran. But the church stretched endlessly before me, each step slower than the last. Hands brushed my arms, my neck, pulling me closer to the slab. And then, I woke up. This morning I tried to leave town. I packed a bag, got in my car, drove until the road ended. But somehow, I ended up here again, in the parking lot of that church. It's 11:47 p.m. now. I can see the doors from where I'm sitting. They're already open. I don't think I'll come back from this one. New horror story. Tomorrow was my admission date. I worked night security at the old St. Mary's Hospital. It had been shut down for over 20 years, but the city kept the lights on in the main hallway to discourage trespassers. Most nights were silent. Most nights. At 2:17 a.m., the motion sensor in Ward 6 went off. Ward 6 was sealed years ago after a fire. The windows boarded up, the beds still rusting in their places. I grabbed my flashlight and the keys, telling myself it was probably just a rat. The air got colder the closer I walked. The hum of the fluorescent lights faded until the only sound was my own footsteps echoing down the corridor. When I reached Ward 6, the door was already unlocked. I knew I'd locked it earlier. Inside, the smell hit me first. A mix of burnt wood and antiseptic, sharp enough to sting my eyes. My flashlight swept across overturned bed frames and crumbling plaster, then stopped. In the corner, a wheelchair was facing the wall. It began to move. Not roll, turn, slowly, as if someone invisible was sitting in it. The metal wheels squealed against the cracked linoleum until it faced me directly. That's when I saw her. A woman in a hospital gown, skin gray, hair hanging over her face. She sat in the chair, but her feet didn't touch the ground. Her mouth opened, but the sound didn't come from her lips. It came from everywhere, echoing in the walls. "You're late." I stumbled back, but the door behind me slammed shut. The flashlight flickered, and in the half-light I saw movement on the ceiling. Dozens of black handprints sliding toward me, dripping like ink. The woman began to rise from the wheelchair, but her body didn't move the way it should, each limb twisting separately, like a puppet with tangled strings. She stopped inches from my face. Her eyes weren't eyes. They were empty sockets, but somehow, I still felt her stare cutting into me. "You shouldn't have come here," she whispered. The sound was inside my head now, crawling under my skin. I tried the door again, locked. When I turned back, she was gone. The wheelchair rolled forward on its own and bumped into my legs. Taped to the seat was a patient chart, yellowed and brittle. It had my name on it. Admission date, tomorrow. The lights went out. In the pitch black, I felt fingers close around my wrist. Ice cold, unshakable. A voice inches from my ear. "Stay. The others are waiting." The lights came back, and I was standing in the empty ward, the wheelchair gone. But my wrist still burned with the shape of her hand, as if the touch hadn't been part of the dream. I quit that night. The city hired someone else for the job. A week later, I heard he'd gone missing. They found his flashlight in Ward 6. It was still on.
New horror story. Detective Rivera's final recording. Ice cream truck song in my walls. I can't sleep tonight. I'm recording this for my own sanity. Maybe for evidence later. The humming started again 20 minutes ago. Same tune, same walls. It's been 3 weeks since the Holloway case went cold. 7 children, ages 4 to 8, gone without a trace. No witnesses, no evidence, just missing. The first time I heard the humming was at Tommy Holloway's house, inside his bedroom. It drifted from the closet door. His mother didn't hear it. She only said I looked pale, like I'd seen a ghost. Tonight, I found something worse. My case files, the ones I keep at home. Someone's been writing in them with crayons, childish handwriting, words like, "He helps us hide." Detective Rivera knows the secret place. The music man likes him. Then I checked my phone records. Dozens of calls to the families of the missing kids. I don't remember making them, but the transcripts exist. My voice, my badge number. Every time the same. Detective Rivera, missing persons. We've had reports of suspicious activity. Would you mind if your child stayed at a friend's house tonight for safety? 7 families, 7 children. None came home. And the humming is louder now. It's Turkey in the Straw. The ice cream truck song. But there hasn't been an ice cream truck here for 15 years. Not since Leonard Voss was arrested. Voss? A predator. He drove an ice cream truck, released 8 months ago. His parole officer hasn't seen him in weeks. And now memories are coming back. Broken fragments. Late night drives to Porter Street. The old warehouse. I remember children's laughter inside. Not happy laughter. Terrified, forced giggles. I smelled rust and rotting wood. I saw Voss in the doorway wearing that uniform. He looked at me and said, "Thanks for the deliveries, detective. You've been so helpful." The children were in cages built from chicken wire and shopping carts, all 7. Alive but broken. Glassy eyes, humming the same tune over and over. And I realize now, I delivered them. Somehow I did. I found a key in my pocket with a note wrapped around it. An address. 1247 Porter Street. The humming stopped. Then my phone rang, a woman's voice. "Detective Rivera, this is Mrs. Patterson. You called about my daughter, Emma. She's ready now." But I never called her. Emma Patterson isn't missing. Yet I'm driving anyway. My hands won't stop. Every radio station plays Turkey in the Straw. At the Patterson house, Mrs. Patterson waits on the porch. Emma stands beside her, suitcase in hand, humming softly. Case file update. Detective Rivera's patrol car was found abandoned at 1247 Porter Street. The warehouse was empty. 7 backpacks. 1 old ice cream truck radio still playing the tune. 8 children missing. Rivera's whereabouts unknown. Mrs. Patterson insists she never spoke to any detective. Emma Patterson was found safe 3 days later, with no memory of leaving home. New horror story. Final recording. I am the midnight bus driver of Route 47. Look, I'm only telling you this because I can't take it anymore. And if something happens to me tonight, someone needs to know the truth about Route 47. I've been driving the midnight bus for 3 years now. Same route every night. Downtown to the suburbs, 43 stops, crossing Millfield Bridge at exactly 2:17 a.m. The pay's decent. The passengers are mostly harmless drunks and night shift workers, and I thought the worst thing I'd ever see was someone puking in the back seats. I was wrong. It started 6 months ago when they rerouted us over the old bridge instead of the highway overpass. Budget cuts, they said. The bridge spans this massive concrete pit that used to be a quarry. Now it's just this black void that the city pretends doesn't exist. During the day, you can't see much down there through the chain link fence. But at night, when my headlights sweep across that darkness as we cross, that's when I started seeing things. The first time, I thought it was construction work. These pale figures moving around down there in the shadows, maybe 50 feet below. but construction crews don't work at 2 a.m., and they sure as hell don't move like that. Jerky, unnatural, like broken marionettes. I slowed down, squinting through the driver's side window, and that's when I heard Mrs. Kowalski in seat 12 start whimpering. "Don't look down there, driver," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Never look down there." But I couldn't help myself. Night after night, I found my eyes drawn to that pit. The figures became clearer. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, wandering in endless circles. They wore hospital gowns, work clothes, wedding dresses, all of it gray and tattered. Their faces were wrong. Stretched too long, eyes too wide, mouths hanging open in silent screams. The smell started creeping in through the air vents around week 3. Sweet and rotten, like flowers left too long in a funeral home. It made passengers gag and cover their noses, but nobody ever asked what it was. They all seemed to know somehow. The regulars would close their eyes tight when we approached the bridge, gripping their seats until we'd crossed. Then I started recognizing some of the faces down there. Mr. Patterson, who used to take my bus every Tuesday to his dialysis appointments. He'd been dead for 2 months, but there he was, stumbling around that pit in his favorite cardigan. Sarah Chen from the bank, who had died in that car accident last winter, still wearing her work uniform. They looked up at the bus as we passed, and their eyes, they knew me. They reached upward with skeletal fingers, mouths moving soundlessly. I should have quit. Should have transferred routes, found another job, anything. But I couldn't. Every night I felt this pull, this compulsion to drive that route, like something was calling me back to that bridge. The truth is, I made a deal. 3 years ago, my daughter Emma was dying. Leukemia. The doctors gave her weeks, maybe days. I was desperate, broken, willing to try anything. That's when I met him in the hospital parking lot. A man in an expensive suit who seemed to know exactly what I was going through. He offered me a choice. Emma could live, have a full, healthy life, but I'd have to work for him. Drive a special route, transport certain passengers, and never ask questions. The price seemed too good to be true, but Emma's alive today because I said yes. I didn't understand what the job really meant until tonight. Tonight, the bus filled up differently. Instead of the usual collection of late shift workers and barflies, my passengers were silent, ethereal figures who boarded without paying. They sat perfectly still, staring straight ahead with hollow eyes. I recognized some of them from the pit. As we approached the bridge, I felt the bus growing heavier, like we were carrying more weight than physics should allow. The engine strained, the steering wheel vibrated under my hands, and that sweet rot smell became overwhelming. Through the rearview mirror, I watched my passengers begin to fade, becoming translucent, then disappearing entirely. That's when I realized what I've been doing all these months. I'm not just a bus driver, I'm a ferryman. Route 47 doesn't end at the suburbs, it ends in that pit. Every night, I've been collecting souls, bringing them to their final destination. The living passengers, the ones who close their eyes and grip their seats, they're just along for the ride, witnesses to something they can barely comprehend. And now I understand why Mrs. Kowalski always sits in seat 12, why she takes this bus every single night, even though she never gets off at any of the stops. She's been dead for 5 years. The bus is empty now except for me, and we're approaching the bridge again. But this time feels different. This time, I can see Emma standing by the side of the road up ahead, looking exactly like she did before she got sick. She's smiling and waving, but her eyes are just like theirs. I think my 3 years are up. I think tonight I don't get to drive back. But here's what's keeping me awake, what's making my hands shake as I record this. If I've been dead this whole time, if this has all been some kind of purgatory, then who the hell has been taking care of Emma? New horror story. The Ouija board I shouldn't have touched. I need you to understand something before I tell you what happened in my dorm room last Tuesday night. I was never the type of person who believed in this stuff. Never. But here I am 3 days later, and I still can't stop my hands from shaking. It started because my roommate Tyler got food poisoning from the cafeteria and went home for the week. I was alone in our cramped double, drowning in midterm stress, when I found the Ouija board shoved under his bed while looking for his phone charger. The thing looked ancient. wooden, with brass corners that had turned green with age and letters so worn I could barely make them out in the dim light of our desk lamp. I'd seen Tyler mess around with it before at parties, but never thought much about it. That night, though, something about the silence pressing against our thin walls made me pull it out. Maybe it was the loneliness, or maybe I just needed a distraction from the organic chemistry textbook that might as well have been written in Sanskrit. The board felt ice cold against my fingertips, even though our radiator had been blasting heat all evening. I placed it on Tyler's desk and put my fingers on the planchette. That heart-shaped piece of wood that's supposed to move to spell out messages. The plastic felt smooth, almost slippery, like it had been handled by countless fingers before mine. "Is anyone there?" I whispered, feeling ridiculous. Nothing happened for maybe 5 minutes. Just the distant hum of fluorescent lights in the hallway and the occasional footstep from the room above. Then, so slowly I thought I might be imagining it, the planchette began to drift toward yes. My breath caught. The movement felt too deliberate, too purposeful to be my own unconscious pushing. "What's your name?" I asked. ED. The room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls had shifted inward by inches. The smell hit me next. Something metallic and sharp, like pennies mixed with burned coffee. I looked around, but everything appeared normal. Just my unmade bed, Tyler's spotless desk, and our 2 windows showing nothing but darkness beyond the glass. "How did you die, David?" "FIRE," was the reply. The temperature in the room plummeted. I could see my breath now, small puffs of white vapor that shouldn't exist with our heater running full blast. The radiator had gone completely silent. That's when the poltergeist activity started. First, just small things. My textbook slammed shut by itself, the pages ruffling like invisible fingers were flipping through them. The desk lamp flickered once, twice, then began strobing in a rhythm that matched my racing heartbeat. I wanted to stop, wanted to put the board away, but my hands wouldn't leave the planchette. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "To remember," Ouija Table said. The mirror above Tyler's dresser cracked down the middle with a sound like breaking bones. Papers scattered across the floor as if caught in a sudden wind, though I felt no air movement. The smell of smoke grew stronger, acrid and choking, making my eyes water. "Remember what?" "Who you are," was the answer this time. That's when I noticed something impossible. In the cracked mirror, I could see the room behind me, but my reflection wasn't there. The desk, the board, the floating planchette moving by itself, but no person sitting in the chair. I jerked my hands away and spun around. The room fell silent instantly. No more flickering lights, no more scattered papers, just the overwhelming smell of smoke and the chill that seemed to have settled into my bones. I stumbled to my feet and grabbed my phone, hands trembling as I called Tyler. "Dude, what's up?" he answered on the second ring. "The Ouija board," I gasped. "Where did you get it?" "What Ouija board?" "The one under your bed. The old wooden one." Silence stretched between us, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. "Man," Tyler said finally, his voice strange and distant. "I don't own a Ouija board, and... David? That's your name. Your name is David. You died in the dorm fire 3 years ago. We've been having this same conversation every night for months." I looked down at my hands. They were translucent in the lamplight, growing fainter by the second. The board was gone. It had never been there. So if I'm dead, and Tyler is alive, and I've been trying to reach him through that board every night, with who exactly have I been talking to? New horror story. Backrooms in my apartment building, the tenants who don't exist. I need to tell someone about this before I lose my mind completely. I've been getting emergency calls from my tenants all night, and I swear to God, something is very, very wrong with what's happening in my building. My name is Trevor, and I'm the live-in superintendent for Riverside Apartments. One of those old brick buildings on the east side with paper-thin walls and radiators that clank like chains. It's usually quiet after midnight. Just me and my basement unit listening to the building settle and the occasional drunk stumbling through the lobby. The kind of job where most emergencies can wait until morning, except for the real ones. But tonight, the emergency line won't stop ringing. The first call came in at 12:47 a.m. Mrs. Chen from 4B, her voice barely a whisper, crackling through the old intercom system. "Trevor, please, I'm trapped in my apartment. The door won't open, and something's wrong with the lights. They keep going out, and I can hear... Oh God, I can hear breathing in my walls. I grabbed my master keys immediately and took the stairs to the 4th floor. The hallway was dim, lit only by those old yellow bulbs that make everything look jaundiced. But Mrs. Chen's door was standing wide open, and her apartment was completely empty. Not just vacant, cleaned out, like no one had lived there in months. The air tasted metallic, and there was this smell, sweet but wrong, like flowers left too long in stagnant water. The second call came as I was walking back to my unit at 1:23 a.m. Mr. Rodriguez from 2A, same desperation in his voice. Trevor, thank God. Someone's been following me in the building. They're in the walls. I can hear them scratching. The sound keeps getting closer, and my door won't lock from the inside. I climb to the 2nd floor, my footsteps echoing through the narrow stairwell. The scratching sound was real. I could hear it before I even reached his door. Long, deliberate scrapes against drywall, like fingernails dragging slowly down a chalkboard. But when I used my key to check his apartment, nothing. Just the lingering scent of that sickly sweet smell, stronger now. The calls kept coming. Every 20 to 30 minutes, different tenants, different floors. Always someone trapped, always someone afraid. And every time I investigated, I found empty apartments and that smell, and the growing certainty that something was hunting through my building. By 4 a.m., my hands were shaking as I answered the emergency line. The voice was barely human now, more of a wet whisper. Basement storage room. It's down here with me. It knows I'm hiding. Please, you have to help me before... The line went dead. I knew every inch of this building. There was no tenant in the basement storage room. But the caller ID showed the call was coming from inside the building, from an extension I didn't recognize. I pulled out the building blueprints from my desk drawer, my fingers trembling as I unfolded the yellowed papers. There it was, a sub-basement level marked on the original 1963 construction plans, but sealed off during renovations in 1987. The records showed it was abandoned due to structural irregularities and persistent water damage. I found the access door behind the old furnace. The metal was rusted, but recent scratches around the lock suggested it had been opened recently. My flashlight beam revealed wooden stairs descending into absolute darkness. The smell hit me like a physical force, that sweet, rotting stench mixed with something else. Something organic and wrong. The stairs groaned under my weight as I descended. At the bottom, my light revealed a long corridor lined with doors that looked exactly like the apartment doors upstairs. Most were slightly ajar, and from each one came the sound of breathing. Not human breathing. Too slow, too deliberate, like something pretending to be asleep. I approached the first door and peered inside. It was a perfect replica of Mrs. Chen's apartment, but the walls were covered in what looked like scratch marks. Deep gouges in the drywall, as if something had been trying to claw its way out. That's when I heard my own voice coming from inside. Trevor, please, I'm trapped in my apartment. The door won't open. I stumbled backward, my flashlight beam dancing wildly across the corridor. From the next door came another voice, mine again. Trevor, thank God. Someone's been following me in the building. Every door I passed revealed the same thing. Perfect replicas of my tenants' apartments, each one playing recordings of my own voice making the calls I'd been receiving all night. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when I reached the last door and found myself sitting at a desk, answering an old rotary phone, taking emergency calls from tenants who didn't exist. On the desk was a building directory, and every name was Trevor. Every apartment number listed Trevor as the tenant. The thing wearing my face looked up from the phone and smiled at me with too many teeth. Now I'm back in my basement unit, and I don't know if I ever left. The emergency line keeps ringing, and I know it's my voice on the other end, calling for help from apartments that mirror my own building. But every time I climb those stairs to investigate, I find myself descending deeper into basements that shouldn't exist. But here's what I can't figure out. If I'm the one trapped in those replica apartments, and I'm also the one sitting at this desk, then who's been living in my building all these years? New horror story. The VHS tapes show a family that was never mine. I'm recording this at 3 a.m. because I found something in my grandmother's attic that can't be real. And I need someone else to see what I'm seeing before I convince myself I'm going insane. Found them yesterday in my late grandmother's attic. A shoebox full of unmarked VHS cassettes wrapped in yellowed newspaper from 1987. The handwriting on the labels was mine, but I've never seen these tapes before in my life. The first one I popped into my old TV downstairs was labeled Family Christmas 1993. I was 12 that year, so I figured it'd be nostalgic. Maybe some footage I forgot about. The tape kicked in with that familiar VHS hiss, tracking lines rolling down the screen before the image stabilized. It showed our living room, all right. Same ugly brown couch, same artificial tree in the corner. But there were people in the room I'd never seen before. A woman with auburn hair was opening presents with a little girl who couldn't have been more than 5. They were laughing, calling each other Mom and Emma. The camera work was shaky, amateur, but whoever was filming kept zooming in on their faces like they were studying them. I grew up an only child. My mother died when I was 8. Cancer, quick and brutal. But this woman looked exactly like my mom, just older. The way she would have looked if she'd lived to see Christmas 1993. The timestamp in the corner read December 25th, 1993. I remember that Christmas. I spent it alone with my grandmother because my dad was working a double shift at the plant. We ate frozen dinners and watched reruns. There was no little sister named Emma. There was no woman who looked like my mother. The second tape made my hands shake. Emma's first day of school, 1995. The camera followed the same little girl, now maybe 7, walking up the steps of Roosevelt Elementary. My elementary school. The woman who looked like my mother was holding her hand, waving at whoever was behind the camera. You could hear heavy breathing through the microphone and occasionally a whispered, beautiful or perfect from the cameraman. But here's what made me rewind it 6 times. I remembered that day. Not as the boy walking with them, but I remembered seeing them. There had been a new girl that year, Emma something, who disappeared after just 3 weeks. The teachers said her family moved suddenly. I remembered thinking she looked sad all the time, like she was scared of something. The third tape was labeled Family Dinner, October 1995. Same kitchen, same scratched wooden table where my grandmother fed me every night. But in this footage, it was set for 4 people. The woman, the little girl Emma, an older man I'd never seen before. And behind the camera, that same heavy breathing. The conversation was wrong. They kept looking directly at the camera with these frozen smiles like they were performing. The little girl's eyes darted toward the exits. When she asked to be excused, the woman's smile got wider and she shook her head once, sharply. "We're not done yet, sweetheart," she said. "Our family time is precious." The camera zoomed slowly on the little girl's face. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she kept smiling. Tape 4 through 12 were all the same house, same family, but spread across 2 years. Birthday parties, bedtime stories, family portraits posed in front of our fireplace. In every single one, you could hear the cameraman breathing, occasionally whispering directions. Smile wider. Hold hands. Look happy. The final tape was different. No label, just black electrical tape wrapped around the cassette. The footage was darker, grainier. It showed the basement of my grandmother's house, but it looked different. Newer carpet. Fluorescent lights that hummed audibly through the speakers. There were toys scattered around. Dolls and coloring books and that same little girl, Emma, sitting in the corner. She wasn't smiling anymore. The camera was perfectly still this time, like it was mounted on a tripod. The timestamp showed October 18th, 1995. The day Emma disappeared from school, she looked directly into the lens and mouthed 2 words. "Help me." The tape cut to black, then came back. Same basement, but years later, dust covered everything. The toys were still there, arranged exactly the same way, but covered in cobwebs. I've been living in this house for 3 years since my grandmother passed. I've been in that basement hundreds of times. I've never seen those toys before, but when I went down there an hour ago, they were exactly where the tape showed them. If I filmed all of these tapes, why don't I remember this family that lived in my house? Thank you for listening. If you really like the story, please like the video and subscribe for more daily stories. Thanks.